Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle Mutant Mayhem has finally released in theaters. Cowabunga dudes all over the globe are getting to experience this new iteration of the Heroes in a Half Shell. And so what I'm going to do here for you guys is just giving you my spoiler review to Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle Mutant Mayhem, giving you my reaction to certain scenes, what I absolutely loved about it, some of the things I wasn't that crazy about, because, you know, Turtle fans, we be picky sometimes. As well as diving into our predictions for the next movie, because we did get a post-credit scene, and we have an upcoming Paramount Plus 2-season show. So a lot of turtle action headed our way, and I want to know all your opinions down below. All right, so just to kind of reiterate my thoughts on this movie, I absolutely loved it, okay? I thought it was a great time, a fun iteration. The animation style done in here really excelled the movie for me. This kind of like sloppy hand-drawn feel and what they would do with like explosions or even these ugly looking human being faces, it just gave the movie such personality. But aside from that, you know, having the turtles actually being voiced by teenagers this time around gave it a whole new energy. You could really feel the chemistry between the group, and although there was some lowbrow kid humor, vomit stuff, I found myself laughing a lot through the movie and even just smiling so big when those action scenes went down. Like the fight scene where they play the No Diggity song and it cuts to different fights they're having with different criminals. That was so beautifully done. I'm gonna see this movie again just to experience that awesome scene. But okay, now kind of diving into specifics about the movie, let's start off with the thing that is always intriguing, the new origin of the Turtles. So this is something I'm kind of mixed on because I thought they did some things right and some things as a traditional Turtle fan where I was like, I felt like that could have been handled better. So here TCRI is still basically responsible for the ooze, and we even get Baxter Stockman in the opening experimenting on different animals, which is how we get this long lineup of villains in Mutant Mayhem. But putting that aside for now and focusing on the Turtles and Splinter, I do like what they did with Splinter and saying, you know, he's a rat in New York. Everybody fears him and is disgusted by him. He's gone his whole life with people trying to kill him. So when he stumbled upon a group of baby turtles and this ooze, and they were the first things ever to be kind to him, he just grew an attachment to them and wanted to protect them no matter what. I do like that aspect of it, and I feel it builds an interesting new relationship to Splinter and the Turtles we hadn't seen done before. Even all that more heartbreaking when in the movie we get Splinter finally trying to let the Turtles out into the real world, and he almost ends up dying. People are rejecting him, almost gets hit by a car. Like, that was some sweet sentimental stuff I like that the movie included in. But the part that had me kind of mixed on it is how the Turtles then learn martial arts and their fascination with ninjutsu or being ninjas. So after having that horrible event above land and everyone trying to kill them, Splinter goes, well, I need to protect my kids. I need to make sure they can fight back in case this ever happens again. And they start learning the art of martial arts through just watching movies, you know, kung fu films. And that part, as a traditional Turtle fan, it was slightly disappointed. It kind of gave me flashbacks to the Michael Bay movies where they learned it from a book. But I kind of let it go and didn't let it bother me as much as I've seen other Turtle fans be really stuck on that. And that's just, again, because I've just grown to the idea that every iteration of the Turtles is going to come out different. They're going to throw in something new in the origin. They're going to mix things up. I still think the origins where they handled it best are like in the original 80s cartoon or in the 2012 series where Splinter was a human being that learned martial arts all their life before they turned into a rat. Or even I thought the 90s version, as ridiculous as that was, a rat mimicking his owner's martial arts moves and then teaching him to the Turtles, that worked for me. It just feels like an origin that makes a lot more sense because Splinter does have an Asian accent. You know, Jackie Chan is the voice of Splinter in here and he does a great job. But I think always doing the origin where Splinter isn't tied to Japan or learning martial arts on his own and then passing it to the Turtles is always a missed opportunity. But whatever, that's just one thing that slightly annoyed me as they learned it from watching movies. If you really think about it, I bet the Ninja Turtles have been responsible for kids signing up for karate or whatever throughout the years. But now focusing on the part where the Turtles are fully grown, 15 years old, they're doing these errands for Splinter, you know, going to get toilet paper, bags of chips. I thought all that was handled in such a great way and made you really sympathize with the Turtles. Like when they're watching a group of people watching an outside movie, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and you can just see they want to connect with humankind. These are ideas always explored in Turtle movies. I mean, we saw it kind of touched on in Michael Bay's Out of the Shadows, where Mikey wants to just be above ground and interact with people, but by the end of that movie, they choose to just stay hidden and only the police just know they exist. Here, they built up to something completely different, which I do admire, but just seeing that stuff, the brothers always wondering, you know, that you think we're always going to be in the sewer, we're always going to be around each other. I like that emotional layer they added on into the movie. Now, we get to them meeting April O'Neil, and to me, even as someone who wasn't a fan of April O'Neil's design in here, I feel character-wise, they did her justice. Yeah, she's in high school and not an adult, but this is like the third iteration where April O'Neil is a teen alongside the Turtles. She's also still a reporter, only this time for her high school paper. I even thought the backstory they gave her was a little bit funny. We find out that she tried doing morning announcements and ended up vomiting in front of her entire school. I was not expecting to see April O'Neil vomit in here, but alright. But that becomes a motivating factor for her in this movie, is Superfly is out there causing mayhem in the city, and it's caused a curfew that has ended one of the school's upcoming dances, and if April O'Neil feels she can crack the case on who Superfly is and get him arrested, the school can have their dance and she'll be looked upon as a hero instead of Puke Girl. Now, one of the interesting parts they added in here that is like super common with a lot of Turtle iterations is one of the Turtles always has to have a crush on April O'Neil, and this time around, they made it Leonardo. Good old Nardo. My personal favorite Turtle. That's always unexpected. It's usually always either Mikey or Donatello that has the crush on April O'Neil. Pretty different to make it Leo this time. And of course, that's where we start getting lines like Sus and Leo rizzing up April. I can't believe they actually made that feel natural in the movie. That's not cringe to me at all. I've seen so much pushback with Turtle fans on that, saying, oh, they use pop culture references in here. I'm like, go back and watch all the other Turtle movies. Every Turtle film has pop culture lingo and references to what was popular for teenagers then.
She's a bear. Swing. A legorama. Yeah. Swing.
That's just what happens, so this is just a good representation of what teens like her now. But yeah, I'm curious to see how hard they'll play into the relationship of Leo and April O'Neil, whether that'll ever really be something or just continue being a background crush. I'm not saying I full-on want them to start dating. I'm just wondering in sequels how much they'll pursue that crush or whether it'll just be like a funny ongoing background gag. Now, kind of getting onto the villains in here and how they play into the story. So they were created around the same time as the Turtles, and I kind of even like the way they changed Superfly's origin, because usually it's Baxter Stockman that becomes Superfly. In fact, that was the original plan for this movie.
It's so different. Draft one of the script, they were like in high school by the end of Act 1. It was like entirely a high school movie. Baxter Stockman was like a teacher at the school. It was so wildly different and it just didn't work. So we had to massively change it. The original design of Baxter Stockman, the original design of Superfly was as a mutated version of Baxter Stockman, which is why the toys, which have a really long lead time, the Superfly toy has like a sweater and a necktie, which is not a thing appropriate at all for his character.
And it's funny hearing him say that was the plan for it, because it feels like everything they were hoping this first movie will now end up being the second movie. I did think it kind of sucked that they killed Baxter Stockman off so quickly. I wonder if they'll reveal he actually lived, or maybe he can come back, especially since you got Giancarlo Esposito to voice him. That feels like such a waste then. He was only in there for such a little bit of time. But the origin of seeing Superfly ground up what he considers his family, seeing his father die, and kind of having that same parallel thought of humankind that Splinter had, where like, I'm a fly, everybody just wants to kill me, no one ever loves me. Yeah, that was fine and all. The only part of that was, you know, a lot of classic TMNT villains are part of that gang. Like Mondo Gecko, voiced by Paul Rudd, probably a standout. Really funny character, and I'm glad that they obviously made him vibe with Michelangelo, because those are two personalities that just go together perfectly. This is the most I felt like Bebop and Rocksteady were kind of pushed off to the side for such popular villains. They were very much just background henchmen, although Seth Rogen and John Cena did great. Ray Fillet singing in there was funny. Ray Fillet. But then that's where like the Turtle fan in me goes like, man, these are such cool villains. I've been wanting to see part of the movies. They all have their own unique origins, and just to make it all, oh, they just all got hit with ooze at the same time and now they're just there. Like I mentioned, the punk frogs in there would be cool to get their own movie, because the backstory I remember attached to Genghis Frog is that Shredder was trying to create his own group of Ninja Turtles, but with frogs. And although they're usually treated as a joke, you know, if they did a movie where they treated them seriously and it'd be, you know, a group of frogs versus a group of Turtles. That would have been a cool movie, but we only get 1/4 of the punk frogs in here. And it was even more surprising what they do at the end of the movie with all these villains, because I was not expecting 90% of them to turn good by the end of the movie. So while like Ice Cube Superfly, who was, yeah, definitely menacing, a big threat, it was fun watching him fight off against the Turtles, he sticks to his plan all the way through until he becomes, you know, a gigantic kaiju, and the Turtles are put into this position where they have to take him down, even make a reference to Attack on Titan. Really cool now that Donatello is an anime boy. And yeah, all those action scenes are fun. We also get the Mr. Beast cameo in there. I was even happy to see them use Vanilla Ice's Go Ninja Go song at the beginning. I thought they even worked it in well then, how humans would start to help out the Turtles. It kind of reminded me of a scene from Spider-Man.
You mess with Spidey, you mess with New York. You mess with one of us, you mess with all of us.
Yeah, absolutely beautifully done, but I wasn't expecting all the villains to then kind of be on the side of the Turtles. The cockroach mutant having a romantic relationship with Splinter. That was kind of funny and random, and they're all just gonna be living down in the sewer with the Turtles. I was like, what? And that's one of those things that I'm kind of mixed on what they did with the villains in here, because Bebop and Rocksteady, I want to see them fight the Turtles. I want to see them be henchmen and idiots trying to fight them. Now, a lot of these villains are the friends of the Turtles, and they're hanging down there in the sewer with them. It's not that I hate the idea. I'm just waiting to see, where do you go with that? What does that mean for the next movie? Because let's talk about then how the Turtle story ends here. That was also a big surprise to me. So a big part of it, again, is Splinter not wanting to let the Turtles go above ground, is scared that, you know, humankind is going to reject them. And I thought it was even so funny and heartbreaking with Splinter tries to create them their own human world in the sewer with cutouts of 3 different Chris's: Chris Evans, Hemsworth, and Chris Pine. That was just funny that they threw that in there. Oh, and I definitely got to mention how Splinter's action scene felt very much inspired to traditional Jackie Chan action scenes where, yes, he's fighting people, but he's also using his environment as weapons. I'm so glad Splinter got a little bit to do in here, because a lot of times in the movies, he's pushed off into the background. The arc they gave him as the worry parental figure and then just embracing the Turtles going out, I thought was great. But then that is how the story for the Turtles end, is that they end up going to high school. The world knows they exist. They're going to accept them into society. And now we're finally going to get Turtle stories where the Turtles are in traditional high school settings. That has always been the part where you kind of separate from the Ninja Turtles. You know, the whole thing is they're Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, teenagers. That's what Seth Rogen really wanted to focus in on with these movies. And I feel like you always can only go so far with that teenage aspect if they're just living in the sewer, if they're just learning everything about teenagers through their phones or through the media. Let's put them in teenage situations, have them go to high school, have them take classes, find out what it's like to get bullied, maybe separate from your brothers a little bit, do homework, or maybe have worries about growing up in a career. I know it sounds wild for the Ninja Turtles, but I'm open to those story potentials. That's so different, and we haven't really seen that done before. So while yes, it might seem a little weird, especially looking at the costumes and clothing that they wear, I think it lends the opportunity for some fun story potentials. Now, let's talk about the potentials for where the sequel is going, the post-credit scene, and all that. So while we wait for the sequel to TMNT that has already been confirmed, it's going to be coming. I'm sure we'll have to wait maybe 2-3 years for it. It all depends how long that animation style takes to work with here, but in the meantime, we are going to get a Paramount Plus show that's going to be 2 seasons long. It's going to be 2D animated, so I don't think it'll feel that different to what we saw in the actual movie. And the plot goes as the Turtles will be challenged like never before, as Leo, Raph, Donnie, and Mikey each go at it alone. For the first time, faced with new threats and teaming up with old allies, the Turtles would discover who they really are when they don't have their brothers at their sides. And so that's going to be the focus of the Paramount Plus show, is yeah, they maybe could give us origins or flesh out some deeper things with the villains that are now living in the sewer with the Turtles, but it looks like most of it is going to be focusing on them going to high school, seeing what it's like with Donnie has a class without his brothers there, or Raph. What other activities do they get into? I think that's going to be the fun aspect, because all 4 brothers have wildly distinct personalities, and they could touch upon those themes that they've never been able to have. Is what happens when someone you grew up with, were in Pampers with, were, you know, playing on the playground with, you go to school and you go your different ways. You're in different peer groups. Do you then start hating each other? Do you start fighting? Are you no longer a team? That's the exciting story potential I'm talking about with the Turtles that I thought was never possible. Like, Raph is for sure probably going to join like the wrestling team or be a football player, join the sports, obviously be a jock. Mikey already signed up for the improv class, so it looks like he's going to be a typical theater kid and run around that group. Donnie will be with the tech heads, maybe a robotics collab or something like that. And Leo's probably just going to follow along wherever April goes, maybe also being a reporter for the high school or falling somewhere more in the middle. I think TMNT 2 is definitely going to be about what happens then when these brothers split up, but then they need to come together to face a bigger threat. So let's talk about that post-credit scene. So in the post-credit scene that just felt kind of like a little gag, little joke, showing the turtles starting to go to school, we zoom out and see a character I didn't talk much about in this spoiler review, but is definitely going to be a large part of the next two movies, Cynthia Utrom, that any turtle fan should have known is an obvious cover-up for an Utron. That's the alien species race for the Krangs. It's highly doubtful this is actually a human being, and it's more likely one of those Utron suits that the Krangs hide in. Looks like there was already too much going on in this movie that they didn't want to reveal that, but they did reveal they're up to no good. They have nefarious purposes going on. They even captured Superfly, so there's a chance Superfly could come back in the sequel. But the part that surprised me is that they need to take care of these turtles, and then they hint that it's time to bring out the Shredder. And that's where it cuts to a shot of New York and a silhouette of what is obviously Shredder in his classic getup, and we're like, Shredder's the baddie for the sequel. Now, couple of things on this. I really hope they treat Shredder respectfully, okay? I already don't love that he's going to be a henchman for the Utron, because that is, again, giving me flashbacks to the Michael Bay movies, where Shredder was just being used as a pawn, and then when stuff finally went down, they kicked Shredder out of the story plot so quickly. I really just don't want Shredder to come off like a henchman. I want him to be the big boss, to come out with his Foot Clan, be a huge threat for the Turtles. And with the way the fight scenes went down in this movie, oh, I'm so excited for the Turtles to go up against people that are gonna know martial arts like the Foot Clan or the Shredder, because that's gonna look so badass there. And again, like I was saying, they're obviously setting up a future where the Turtles are in high school. They're probably gonna separate, not be as close as brothers as they've been. And what is that gonna be when Shredder pops in and they're not really a team anymore? Heck, I wouldn't be surprised if we deal with the storyline that they don't even want to be ninjas, you know? They grow out of that phase. They're like, guys, we're in high school now, okay? We got to think about real careers. We can't always be ninjas. So the movie might be a dilemma of them having to choose, do I stick with the ninja life and protect this city as I should, or should I just give it all up to try and live a normal life, you know, get an office job or work a career? That's where I think Shredder comes into the movie. And just like with Across the Spider-Verse, where they just heighten up the story, have the characters grow up a little bit, the potential is there, man, for this to be a really great trilogy. Because while the Turtles are going to high school and getting to live above ground, we don't know what's going on with Bebop and Rocksteady or Paul Rudd's Mondo Gecko. What if they decide they don't want to be good and they get persuaded by Shredder to join them? That's something that could happen in here, or what I think is going to end up being the case. The third movie, it feels like they're setting up for an Utron invasion, and we're going to see the Technodrome come in, which was in the original concept art and first look of these Turtles. Technodrome is there in the background, and that huge invasion can't just be taken down by the Turtles alone. That's where, you know, Bebop and Rocksteady, Mondo Gecko, all these other mutants that they've now made friends with are going to help fight that army in the third movie. That's my guess. Really exciting potential here as a Turtle fan. And reminder, if none of this sounds appealing or like you like it at all, hey man, in 10 years we'll get a new adaptation and maybe you'll like those Turtles. And in between that wait, you'll still get a cartoon here or there, another comic book series, maybe even another live action movie. Turtle content is always coming. But this is where I throw it off to you guys. What do you think then the future for the TMNT is? Do you like the way the movie ended? What weren't you so fond of? What you thought they could have changed? Happy to hear it all down below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, follow me on Twitter at 3C Films or on TikTok at 3C Films. But as always, I'm Chris. Take care.